everyone, my name is Laura. If you are new here, welcome. If you are not, welcome back. Today I'm going to be rooting my Hoya Bella two different ways. I have this super massive strand of Hoya Bella. I got this one from Etsy, and when I got her, she was about, this little one was about this long, so it went just to that little nub. And this one hadn't split yet, so this was as long as it could have been, and it has grown so much for me over the past maybe 3 months. I've had it in my IKEA greenhouse, but yes, so I am going to cut up this plant and I'm going to root it two ways, and this is kind of an experiment for myself. I'm kind of curious to see what happens because I usually root my Hoya in water, and I know I have a video where I root in Sphagnum and I say that Sphagnum is my favorite way of rooting. But I have found most success rooting Hoya in water in my IKEA greenhouse. So I just stick them in little water vials and just let them sit in the greenhouse for a couple weeks, and they root up beautifully. But today I wanted to test Sphagnum and water with my Hoya Bella. Also, this looks kind of goofy because it's just one huge strand and then one tiny strand. And so I want to make this kind of a bushier plant. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to cut this plant up into a couple of cuttings so that it can root, and then I can plant this into kind of a bigger, fuller plant. So I'm gonna get started by deciding where to cut this plant. I'm thinking I'm gonna leave this little guy here. It has another little growth point that it's shooting out over here, so I'm gonna leave that whole section alone. But I do want to cut this one because this is the really, really long one. Maybe I'll cut right before that join. Right before it branches off, or maybe right after. I think I'm going to do 2 cuttings, and I'll stick one in water and one in Sphagnum. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cut because I could sit here and ponder all day. But I'm just going to cut. We'll have this be our first cut, and this be our second cut. And Hoya always have this white sap that comes out. It's not harmful or anything, but I usually just don't like to get it on stuff. But again, it's not harmful. So here's my first cutting. This one is a little bit bigger than this one. These are both of my cuttings. I'm gonna put one in Sphagnum, one in water, and I have 2, let me move this plant out of the way. I have 2 containers that I picked up at the thrift store. They were salt and pepper shakers, and I have washed them out, but the little sticky from the tape, they were taped together, is still on there, which is kind of annoying because they're kind of sticky, but I've run them through the dishwasher and the sticky didn't come off, so I give up. But they're 2 identical containers, and I wanted to use 2 identical containers because I wanted it to be a fair comparison, I guess. And for one, I'm gonna stick one of my cuttings in water, and the other one I'm going to fill with Sphagnum. And I think this one, I'm going to take these 2 bottom leaves out because it's such a short little stem in there that it's not gonna sit. It's not gonna wanna sit in there. Oh, that does not wanna come off. I'm just gonna cut it. But I don't want it plopping out of the vial. There we go. Much better. That'll sit in there nicely. And I'm gonna do the same with, this one because same thing, it has a very short little stem down here. And then it might not sit in the little container very well and just fall out, which will ruin our super duper scientific experiment, of course, because this is about as scientific as it gets. So we've got our 2 BBs. I'm going to fill one of these with Sphagnum and the other with water. I think I'm gonna do this one in Sphagnum because the stem's a little bit shorter, and I'm nervous that if it's in water, it might still plop out, and then I'll do this one in water. So I know I don't know what order these videos are coming out in, but recently I did a video where I showed you how to propagate in Sphagnum, at least how I propagate in Sphagnum, and I will link that either in the cards or down below so that you can see a slightly more detailed explanation of how I root in Sphagnum. But basically I'm just filling this jar with sphagnum moss about as high as I want the cutting to sit, and I'm trying not to pack it in there, just leave like space. I don't know if you can even see that. I think you can. Leave space like in here so that the roots have space to grow and air has room to flow. Okay, I need a little bit more. And I'll add the sphagnum until about where I want the cutting to sit. Okay, that might have been too much. Let's see. That was too much. Okay, perfect. So I have the sphagnum in here, and I have the little plant in here. I'm actually going to turn it so that it's facing, so it doesn't have this little black label facing the front, but the plant is facing. I'm not making any sense. I want it facing this way, so this is how I'm going to do it. And now I'm going to add more sphagnum and just make sure that it's like enough to hold the plant in there and covering all the nodes that I want to root, but I don't want to pack it in there because I don't want to like crush the roots as they grow. So just enough to fill it and cover it. I'm taking this is the long fiber sphagnum, so it has a bunch of like really long, weird kind of stemmy pieces, and so I'm pulling those out because these little containers are so small. It's just like annoying to have them in there, but they're not bad. They're just annoying to me. Okay. All right, thinking that looks good. Hoping you can see that well. It's just sitting in the sphagnum. It has 2 nodes sitting in the sphagnum, and as the roots start growing, we'll start seeing them through the glass, and hopefully we'll be able to compare the growth of this one, sorry, I decided I wanted to add more sphagnum, to the growth of the one that I'm about to stick in water. I'm really interested to see if there's a difference. I'm going to put both of these in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet so that they're both like I'm going to put them side by side so that there's really not a difference between the 2 cuttings, and both the cuttings come from the same exact plant, so hopefully any difference that we see in the rooting progress is actually due to the different mediums that I'm using for rooting and not any other external factors. Though I'm sure there's other things that could affect it, like this isn't a perfect experiment, but I think it's just fun to see. Now I'm going to fill up this vial with water and I will be right back. Okay, I filled it right up to the top with water, and now I'm just gonna plop in my little cutting. And I did not use any sort of plant food or plant vitamins or anything in this water, nor did I in the water that I used for the sphagnum, to hydrate the sphagnum. I used the exact same water from the same source, same temperature, everything. So that, again, I don't want to introduce any other external factors that could change the rate at which these root. But yeah, this is what these two, this one just wants to flip over. Okay. Do what you want, honey. This is what these 2 look like. And I'm gonna go plop them into my IKEA greenhouse. I'll show you where I'm putting them. I'm gonna put them just side by side under a grow light in there. And I will keep updating you. I don't know how long I'll be filming this video for. I guess until I'm ready to pot them up, or ready to pot one of them up, and we'll see if either of them is like substantially more rooted or quicker at rooting than the other. This will be really interesting. But I'm gonna go show you where I'm gonna put them. And then I'll give you an update in a week or so. Okay, we're in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet, and I have placed both of my new cuttings back here. They're right behind the humidifier that I have off right now, and they're both almost completely directly under the grow light that I have in here. Let me see if I can get closer. Perfect. So they're on my Hoya shelf with the rest of my Hoyas. Over here we have the one in sphagnum. Over here we have the one in water. I'm wondering if from the outside you can get a better view. maybe. Sorry, the glass is super dirty. Just ignore that. It's like all the fertilizer that's dripped down the sides. That's cute. I guess if I took the humidifier out, you might be able to see it better. Genius. Genius. But yeah, there they are. And I will give you updates, but weekly updates, as it grows. As they both grow, I guess. And then Mama Plant is up here. And Mama Plant was so long. I'm so happy to see this one just like not as long as it was, because it was so long that when I shut the door on here, I couldn't shut it all the way. I had to leave it a gap open because this like piece that would branch off was so long that it went all the way across my Syngonium elbow and it would hit the glass, and if I pushed it all the way closed, it would like bend the whole stem up, and so I had to leave this a crack open. So I'm very, very excited that I no longer have to do that. Last look, there's a Mama Plant up there. And I know the humidity is a little bit low right now. That's because I have had my humidifier turned off for a little bit. But usually humidity sits around 75 to 80%. And my 2 baby plants. We'll see what happens. Okay, so I just got back from a run and took a shower, so that's why I'm like no makeup, hair is in a wet bun. But I was looking at my IKEA cabinet and I was looking at the cuttings that we took about a week ago now. I'll insert the date on the screen and the date that I took them, and then I'll also insert the date that it is today, but I think it's been about 7 days. And oh my goodness, we have roots. Okay, so let me show you what they're looking like. Okay, the glass is super dirty because I've been spraying it with water and it was not like distilled water, so I have hard water stains now. My bad. But yes, this is the one that was in water, and we have some growth there, and we have a ton of roots. Let me pull both of them out so I can show them both to you. Okay, this is the one that's in water. So as you can see, there's a lot of root growth in about a week, and it just, since there's a growth point already on here, it just kept shooting out new growth. So that's where we're at 1 week later. Now let me show you the one that's in sphagnum moss. Okay, here's the one that was in sphagnum moss, so not a lot of new growth. Sorry, my camera is super shaky, and by my camera I mean my hand is super shaky. But yeah, not a lot of new growth. It's kind of tough to see the roots since it is in sphagnum moss, so I'm going to try to very gently pull it out so that we can inspect what the roots are looking like. Okay, so here are both of the cuttings. The sphagnum is on the left, the one that was rooting in sphagnum, and on the right is the one that was rooting in water. And honestly, I have to say that the root growth looks pretty comparable after 1 week of growth. It's kind of hard to see the roots that the one that's growing in sphagnum has, since they're all covered in the sphagnum moss, and I don't want to disturb the roots too much. But as you can see, like, they're pretty substantial roots for 1 week of growing. And as I showed you earlier, the one that was growing in water already has a new little growth nub. The one that was growing in sphagnum does not yet. But yeah, so far, I really think that the growth is comparable on both of these. We'll check back in about a week. I'll see you then. Okay, so it's been about 2 weeks since I took those cuttings, maybe 2.5 weeks now, since I took those cuttings of my Hoya Bella, and I want to give you an update on what they are looking like. I think this will be the last update since the roots are looking pretty good. They are at the point where I would feel comfortable planting them. I'm a little lazy right now, so I'm not going to plant them, but this is kind of a good amount of root to plant your Hoya Bella, so, or any plant really, after propagation. So let's go take a look at them. They look awesome. So here are the 2 cuttings, the Hoya Bella, and I want to quick show you the mother plant. So if you remember, or if you just scroll back in this video, this was not here. This is a whole new offshoot. So let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. Look how much it has grown. All of this is new up here. This is where we took the cuttings from, these little dried up bits. It's already touching the top of my cabinet, so I'm going to have to trim it again because this does not fit in here anymore. But look how crazy fast it grew. It's been about 2 weeks. Hoya Bella is one of the fastest growing Hoyas in my experience and one of the least fusky Hoyas. It is a little bit thirstier than most Hoya, but if you're looking for kind of an easygoing Hoya, Hoya Bella. But anyway, let's go back to the cuttings. So here's the one in water and here's the one in moss, and I'm going to show you their root systems now. Okay, so this is what the roots of the one that was in moss look like now. Those are some really hefty roots, and it has secondary roots too, so you can see those here. If this will focus. It's like those roots that branch off of the main root. It's not focusing, but I'm sure you can see them. So the roots look awesome. This is something I would be super comfortable planting right now, and it has grown 2 new leaves, which is also impressive because it was busy growing roots. So the fact that it grew leaves and roots is super impressive. So thumbs up to water propagating Hoya because this worked. Okay, and here is my propagation in sphagnum moss. It didn't grow as much up top, but I have a feeling that that's because it was spending all of its effort and its energy growing roots. Do you see those roots? Look at that. Oh my goodness. I don't want to pull it out of here because I'm scared to ruin the roots, and I'm not going to pot it up yet, but I'm sure you can get kind of an idea of how significant the root system is on this guy. Because this is a pretty large container. Like, it's larger than the actual cutting. And there are roots all the way down at the bottom. And they look so healthy and plump. So I'm gonna have to give rooting Hoya in sphagnum a thumbs up as well. I did not expect that this root system would be so intricate and so well developed after just 2.5 weeks. And like I said earlier, I think I said this earlier, I usually just propagate my Hoya in water, but this is awesome. This has really shown me that I can propagate my Hoya in sphagnum as well, and they're going to be just as successful, if not more successful. So that's so fun. I'm so excited about this. Again, I'm not going to be potting these up yet because I'm going to be a little bit lazy today and I don't want to pot these up yet. I might do a video potting up a bunch of Hoya propagations that I have. I have so many, so I'll probably do a video where I pot all of those up, and I'll include these 2 little propagations in that as well. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you learned something about propagating Hoya in water and in sphagnum moss. I know I definitely learned that both mediums are awesome for propagating Hoya. I do keep them in a very high humidity environment, and it is pretty warm in here. So they're in my IKEA grow cabinet. It's usually, I mean, right now we're in the middle of June, so it's usually about 80 degrees in here, and humidity sits around 60 to 80%. So that's a little bit of context for how fast these grew. But yeah, it was really, really awesome to watch both of these propagations grow, and I hope you learned something. If you liked this video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. Let me know what kind of content to make for you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!